It has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones that have been tried from time to time, right?
You are looking for a trend rather than finding one. With bad data, garbage in, garbage out.
I guess the saying is that even wartime Ukraine is a happier place to be than India.
I would be curious to know what antidepressant use amongst elite Indians is reaching up.
So they can put out an article saying, guys, democracy is taking a hit again.
Studies confirm.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a non-veg joke.
Wait, what's a non-veg joke? I've never heard this before.
You don't know non-veg joke?
No. Is this a legit term? Why is this index important?
They move up and down. They have a dogfight going out there who can consume the most antidepressants.
So in India, you'll have minimal privacy. even the lift man will tell you if you should, why you're not a father yet. Has been less free and fair than at the height of the emergency in 1976.
So welcome guys, welcome to another episode of The Overcorrection.
Yeah.
Today we are going to be talking about happiness, a loaded subject. The World Happiness Report has come out on March 20th, 2024. And India is ranked behind countries such as Libya, Iraq, Palestine, and Niger. A report released to mark the International Day of Happiness was not a very pleasant reading for Indians around us. Now, we're going to get into some of the issues with this study. Before we get into that, I want to say that criticizing the study is not to say that India is some sort of haven.
Right. It's not a utopia.
And it
by
is
any
not
means.
a utopia by
Far
any
from it,
means.
yeah.
And I think that some people romanticize it a little too much. And when it comes to comparing to Western countries, I have seen quite a few times this particular statement made by people who have lived abroad and then come back to India and have found something positive about it.
Right.
And they say, it's way better to live in India. You know, when you're over there in America, you have to do everything on your own. You have to cook your own food. You have to do your own laundry. You have to clean your own house. It's just, you know, when I come here, everything's just done for me. It's so much easier. Life is so much easier here.
Right.
And what they're basically saying is that what makes their life good here is the fact that there is a huge population of people that are so disenfranchised that they will live a meager hand-to-mouth existence and work for next to nothing. So you can hire 4 of them to make everything from put your chappals under your feet from when you get up in the morning to make your chai.
Yeah.
What is sad is that this is the only positive thing they can think about India.
Right.
The very thing that makes our country extremely underdeveloped and in need of serious change.
Yeah.
I certainly think that for people who romanticize this type of life, need to give a good hard long think about this not being a plus point to India, even though they may benefit from it in the short term.
Correct.
And there are probably a lot of other things about this country you can appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before that.
In fact, I think there's in general an unfortunate tendency, even in cities like Mumbai, to place a premium on struggle. This kind of spirit of Mumbai concept that exists quite a bit, and you have people. I remember there's a video actually circulating of a sheer fight to get on the local train in Mumbai, and people are like, "This is what makes the city," the struggle, the spirit of Mumbai. And you're like, "No, this is bad. This is like bad development. This should not be the case where people are jostling and pushing and where it's hard. It should be, your public transport should be something that enables you to get from place A to place B with a certain level of ease.
And
right?
dignity.
Yeah.
When it comes down to wage workers in this country, there's no dignity of labor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And since you mentioned romanticizing the Mumbai struggle, look, hard work is important.
Yeah.
And I think as a country, we are very hardworking.
Yes.
But the difference between a hard work and struggle. So I try to work hard.
Yeah.
But for me, working hard is I get up in the morning, I have a nutritious breakfast, I'll have a workout in, I'll be well rested, and now I'm ready to work for 8, 10, 12 hours, and I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
But a struggle is when it is not set up conducive for you to work hard.
Yeah.
You have to work hard to even be able to work hard.
Yeah,
You have to
absolutely.
get up, you have to cook, you have to clean.
People's commute can be 2 hours.
People are commuting from Pune to Mumbai daily.
Yeah. That's real.
They're getting up in the morning,
Hustle.
they are cooking food for their families. Women are cooking food for their families.
Yeah.
Taking a train, coming to a job in Mumbai,
Yeah.
and returning back to do the nighttime duties of the house.
Yeah.
And sleeping 4-5 hours and just getting up and doing on repeat. No holidays, no
It's
vacation.
a grind of another level, right?
All this to say that I still think these people are better off than they would be in Libya. A war.
Yeah, I think that's where things start to, as usual, get a bit bizarre, right? See, indexes. Indexes are a way in which we can organize data and kind of organize our world, right? So to provide a different lens with which you can look at the world. So whether it's what is it? Transparency indexes, poverty index, happiness index. So some clearly by the name itself are fairly objective, but some like happiness can be tremendously subjective, right? I know why these indexes exist, but I think that I often have a problem with how they are used to build a narrative which might be erroneous, right?
Do you think that some of these indexes are a little pointless?
Yeah, because see, it's so something like happiness, right? It's so subjective. And even in the methodology of this survey, which we will go into, it points out some glaring errors, right? Because how possibly can you have India ranked worse than Pakistan, Iran, Niger, Palestine, which, I guess in Palestine the survey was done after, but regardless.
Palestine was not also some sort of haven before this.
Correct. Or where, they were still, if you take the conventional rhetoric, which is very much true to an extent, there was a lot of violence being inflicted on innocent people in Gaza and in Palestine by the Israeli armed forces. So it was by no means an enjoyable place to be on a daily basis, right? I assume that the survey is looking at different metrics, but I think from a high level, you can say that, okay, something here is not adding up. Right? Or even more egregiously, the survey in Ukraine was done during the war.
Yeah.
I guess the saying is that even wartime Ukraine is a happier place to be than India, which I don't know. I think so. So the problem is that this data is like then taken as like, clearly in the last 15 years, this country has like become an unhappy place to be, right?
Do you want to get into the study?
Yeah, let's
break down some of
the
metrics on which they gauge themselves. So it is a combination of objective and subjective metrics. So the ranking uses 6 key factors to measure happiness: social support, income, health, freedom, generosity, and absence of corruption. Now, of these, income and health are measured as objective, being your GDP per capita and your life expectancy on the health front.
Right.
The others are a mixture of a bunch of subjective assessments and claims.
Did you say generosity was one of them?
Yes. Because people who are more generous in a society where people are more generous, it's a sign that they are well off enough to be generous.
No, that's making sense. The reason I'm looking at you with absolute bewilderment is that I think one of the things, I think this is a bipartisan thing again, that people remark about when they come to India is what a generous place this is. Atiti Devo Bhava, you treat your guests as they were God. That is like in our very fiber. You go to even any hotel. I went for field work to a forest again, to the in that same tribal area, and where they have nothing, they made a chai and gave it to me. That is the ethos that you're looking at. So, I clearly miss that generosity is a part of this, but that's now even firing off even more alarm bells. But sorry, go on. That's crazy.
I don't know what to say. I don't want to cast aspersions on other countries, but we certainly do know that Indians are exceptionally generous. I think we can say that with pride.
Yeah, dude. That's not, and I don't even think that would be casting an aspersion, because at some level, it's in the base ideological or philosophical framework at some level, at least, and this is maybe an experiential reality for me. But in Western, so in like US, UK, Western Europe, I purposely don't count like Spain, Greece, Italy in this mix, Portugal, because they actually have a very different culture, quite similar to ours, right? So that I always saw that generosity there. But in certain other places, it's very individualistic, right? It's like, can I, me, myself, or you at the, what is it called? You're the nucleus of everything. It's very transactional. So even if there is an element of me doing something for you, it is more often than not with an expectation of something in return, right? And I think I definitely experienced this in my time abroad. I'm sure at some level you felt this there as well.
It
right?
is something,
Yeah.
and Indians notice this when they go abroad. Everyone's like Venmoing you $1 for something, and
Yeah,
it's just not in our
yeah.
culture. And respect to them, they have a tremendous value for money,
Yeah.
which I think is
Which is good.
baked into
Yeah.
their culture, where it
Yeah.
comes from. They
Yeah.
don't want to owe, and they don't want to be owed to
Yeah.
either. But yeah, so generosity is amongst one of those factors, which apparently, I mean, if we scored high on that, then I guess we're down a lot on all of the others.
Yeah, yeah. But again, just to highlight, you have as early as I think it was in last year's report, and there's been a marginal change in this, right? We rank lower than Sri Lanka on happiness, Rohan. And the reason I'm saying this is because when this survey was likely being done, Sri Lanka was in the throes of an economic disaster. Like they were teetering on the brink of a collapse. And I'm sure if we like look up the timelines, this would line up. But probably when this survey was being done, and I will read you this quote because I was so shocked when I read this. This is the own words of a Sri Lankan minister that says this, talking about how India helped them with a $4 billion relief package at the time when they were considered happier than India.
Not generous enough.
Yeah, not generous. Yeah, preparing a $4 billion aid package to help them when they were teetering on the brink of economic collapse. And their minister says, you saved us and you prevented a bloodbath. Those are the words.
So this is where these stats get really murky, because in any pairwise comparison,
Yeah.
no one would reasonably say Sri Lanka or Pakistan.
In
or
this recent situation.
In these
yeah.
recent situations.
Yeah, yeah.
War-torn countries. Let's look at it
Yeah.
like that. No one would say a war-torn country is likely to be happier
Yeah.
than India. It becomes a pretty simple thing to
Correct.
state and be certain of its truth.
Or Myanmar, right? They have a military junta that was like, you're looking at a post-coup situation, high levels of violence, surely, not the ideal utopian stable place that you'd want to be. And I don't see how, again, that this happiness report would have us peg lower than Myanmar. Again, not adding up.
Wasn't years ago Myanmar the world's happiest country?
No, that would be Bhutan.
Bhutan.
Oh, at some point they're like considered the happiest because they don't use GDP, they use GNH, which is gross national happiness, as their index. But I remember meeting someone from Bhutan who and they were younger and politically involved, and even they were saying, like a lot of this is, they say that, but it's not like life is always great for the local Bhutanese people. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's an incredible country, I've been told. But,
Do you think that could have been part of this Western romanticizing of this idyllic life without material possessions that they live in?
Man. Possible. I think I'd wonder how much of these indexes, again, feature this bias as well, right? Like what are the places that you've kind of idolized in your mind? And what are places that you've considered from the get-go, right? You meet anyone, outside who's talking about India, which I guess has changed a bit. There's few things will always come to mind, like an absolute poverty, absolutely polluted, gross, disgusting. Like those are the words you'll hear. So I'm sure at some level that's like fed into people's psyche at some level, and a lot of it not untrue. Obviously, pollution is very bad, corruption is very bad. All these things are there, right? But I don't know.
Are they so much worse than they are in Sri Lanka and Pakistan and Iran and Palestine?
Or Iran and Iraq, bro. Iran and Iraq, really? I just don't. It's not adding up to me. It's not adding up to me. And something else that seemed bizarre to me is that a part of the survey, right? There's a 6 subjective indices that you were talking about, and then they do what's called a Cantrell. I believe it's a Cantrell ladder life evaluation survey. It's like a one question that says, if you are at, imagine a ladder from 0 to 10, 10 being the best possible life you could be living, where are you on that ladder? And that very much informs the happiness report. So now that question itself, I know Cantrell is used a lot, like this survey is used a lot, but I mean, you have to question how legitimate that line of questioning can be, and how easy it is for someone to, if you ask me, am I living the best version of my life, even though let's say I am so privileged, living a very good life, a happy life, I would still say no, it could be better, bro. Yeah, like maybe I'm a 6, right? So the endpoints are not really clear. The endpoints of 0 and 10 are so massively subjective that for me that whole ladder doesn't make sense.
It is so subjective
Yeah.
that you could even have it work completely counter to what you intuit the results will work as.
Exactly.
You could even have a case where in developing nations,
Yeah.
where they have a lot of, say, resources and material pleasures,
Yeah.
they could be stuck in an infinite loop of no, I want more, no, I want more, versus a much more middle class type of life in another country. They could be perfectly content. So
Correct.
contentment, it will, for me, almost reflect something counter.
Yeah.
Where if you're in a society where you're not happy at all with what you have, but you also seem to have everything you should need, that is reflective of something going really wrong with your happiness.
Correct.
Which brings us to some points about the countries which ranked in the top. So the report basically finds a correlation
Right.
between the number of countries who are the happiest
Yeah.
and the countries which have the highest antidepressant use.
Right.
Which is basically a lot of your European Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden.
No. Yeah. Finland,
Norway,
Sweden, Norway,
Denmark.
Denmark. Iceland, I think, is number one on.
So
antidepressants.
they move up and down. They have a dogfight going out there who can consume the most antidepressants. But look, we can talk about how in developed countries there's more discussion around mental health, and that provides greater access to these
Correct.
antidepressant
Yeah.
drugs, and that's why more people are on antidepressants. But we should really think about development. Development should ease out depression over time. I mean, if your politics and your development is not geared towards your population's health, both mental and physical, what else could it be geared towards?
Yeah.
So to say they are extremely developed but still have such high rates of antidepressant use certainly is something to wonder.
Yeah.
And it could possibly indicate that abundance of material wealth and resource is not the path to happiness.
Absolutely.
And that is something I think talking about the elite Indians here who could have a much better quality of life than many people in these Nordic countries because of the sheer level of resources they have here and the cheap cost of labor.
Right.
If we look at the model of what excess resources gives us from these Nordic countries is not the path.
Yeah.
And I would be curious to know what antidepressant use amongst elite Indians is reaching up to. And I've anecdotally heard enough to know it is not something that's not reached here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely increasing. I think, like you said, on one side, mental health is more in conversation. So people are maybe getting to know more about antidepressants, and if it's working for them, great. Because it's a very real problem. But you hit the crux of the matter, right? Like, is in an ideal sense, if that is the model of development that you're chasing, if that's what success as a country looks like, if people should not be as depressed ideally, or the government should be trying to do as much as it can, or the way society operates there should technically help reduce depression, not induce depression. Similarly, youth suicides in the West are on a rise as well, right? Big time. So again, what are the costs of that kind of development? I think we'll have to really introspect to see. India has not reached there yet, but we have time to craft the path that we want. And I think what this survey doesn't check, and we were talking about this earlier, but even a lot of the Finnish people, when they see this coming out that Finland's number one, they're saying, hey, but it's not all that rosy. This survey doesn't really take into account things like loneliness. Whereas in India, just by dint of maybe there being so many people, being the kind of community-focused culture that we are, a lot of that gets mitigated.
We also have better weather.
Yeah.
I mean, seasonal...
seasonal affective disorder. It's real, right?
I'd imagine.
Yeah, like less sunshine, it can affect
I
your
remember
mood.
going into a 2 p.m. class in New England, and you come out and it's dark at 4.
Dark,
And where did my day just go?
Yeah, it's definitely depressing. Yeah. Yeah, I think that loneliness point for me is big, right? And if the survey is not capturing that, and you have a lot of people that are really sad, then that
I
survey is
think
again misleading.
that's where
at
some of
level.
the Western bias
Yeah.
in the people who do these surveys comes in. See, the survey is being conducted by,
Yeah.
I think, another Nordic country.
Yeah.
They may not view community in the same way as us, that, oh, it should be a
Yeah.
key straw. I mean, they have it here in terms of social support, but they count that as, if I was in trouble,
Yeah.
what would I get?
Or maybe like the way the state would support, right? If it's the Nordic model, which is a fantastic model in terms of the state really supporting on healthcare, on quality of life in general. Still, I think there's a community element here that I've not seen in many other countries. And I think in India, interestingly, I was joking with a friend, we have what's called privacy community trade-off.
Okay.
So in India, you will have minimal privacy, close to none. Even like everyone will give an opinion, right? Even the lift man will tell you if you should, why you're not a father yet, why don't you get married? Everyone will have a say, and that's how it is. So there's a trade-off. But on the other end, in the US, say you can go about your day and nobody will ask you a single question. You can do whatever you want, as if you're an adult.
And that sounds nice in some levels, but it's lonely.
Yeah,
When
it's
no
lonely.
one gives a
Yeah.
shit what you're doing,
Yeah.
it's not the nicest
So it's another
feeling.
end of that, right? It's a trade-off. So again, if you can be somewhere in the middle, that's great. But I think a lot of Indians grow up with that community. You have aunts and uncles, and it's like fighting matches going on in the hall. But at some level, it's reassuring that you have people around. And I think that that's something that I know that the West is going to struggle with a lot. It's wrong to say that India is very unhappy. I'm sure. I think they do a 2,000-person sample, which I don't know if that's sufficient to capture India, especially urban, rural, all the states, this and that. But I'm sure there's a method to there is a methodology that they're following. When you do that side-by-side comparison that you're talking about, it's not adding up.
So let's maybe move on to a more objective survey.
Yeah.
And when I say objective, I mean that the topic is more objective.
Yeah.
Whether the survey is objective, we will come to now. Do you want to take us through? This is the VDEM report.
So it's the democracy index, right? Ranking countries on the strength of their democracy. And I always thought starting a discussion like this, you have to start it with the most beautiful quote by, I guess in India, a very controversial gentleman, Mr. Winston Churchill, who said, that it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones that have been tried from time to time, right? So look, it is still the system that at its core believes in this idea of universal suffrage, elected representatives, and citizens having a choice. The majority in the core of democracy, right? People coming together, and if there's a majority that votes on an idea, that idea being executed by their elected representative, right? So I still believe that it is the best way that a country can be equitable and be a template for governance. So I just want to say that. But obviously, this report ends up exposing some challenges with the methodology of this report.
How they've chosen to measure democracy.
Okay, how they've chosen to measure democracy. Exactly. So I think one thing, again, it's not so much India's rank on the VDEM report, which I know it's quite low, and they're saying it has continued to drop. And once again has done worse than countries which actually don't even have proper elections, right? Sham elections. And VDEM report even admits as much.
We have given sham elections a score of 1 out of 1.
Yeah.
Because technically they are run correctly according to the things where a dictator will go there and force you to vote for him. But technically people vote, and technically the person who's voted for gets elected to office.
Correct, right?
Full score.
Full score. So you could objectively be a sham democracy, but score the highest points just because you followed the procedure as outlined by VDEM's methodology.
Before we get into some of the details of it, the model is very sophisticated in terms of its number crunching capabilities. And I think that is where it is being tremendously praised for its ability to gather this amount of data, pass it in a meaningful way, and be able to give us an output on a scale that before we could not have imagined.
Yeah.
But the issue is in the data collection.
Correct. The issue is
So you can have a tremendously technologically savvy system that with bad data, garbage in, garbage out, you will get some crap results. And there's a phenomenon called machine bias,
Right.
Where if something is given to us by technology, we just assume, oh, it's right.
Yeah.
There's no scope for human error. It must be right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit of what has happened here.
Yeah.
Because a big part of what they talk about, the sophistication, is these many supercomputers were required to amalgamate so many quinta-terabytes of data.
Yeah.
And we passed through it using this regression model, which takes so much energy, and we were able to give us an answer.
Yeah.
So that is where it's complemented on. Great, I'm happy people are doing that. But where it falls short is on its data collection criteria and its techniques. So you want to take us through some of them?
Yeah. From reading the report earlier, I know they essentially have the two objective elements, right? But everyone scores high on the objective elements.
Yeah. So there's two objective elements and three subjective elements. And out of 150 odd countries, 130 will score full marks on the two objective elements.
Ones. And the ones that score full on the objective ones for, universal suffrage and like proper elections include, the Hong Kongs, the Mali, Liberia, Palestine, Cuba.
And it does not include India.
Yeah.
Because we had 2 seats that were given by appointment to represent the Anglo-Indian community.
Yeah, which as per constitutional amendment was removed recently. Right? So again, right there in that opening section of how you are actually scoring, there is a problem, right? Because essentially what would have been an objective study has essentially come down to 3 subjective questions. And the subjective questions, you are actually asking who they call experts, industry experts, right? Something like that. Who more often than not in India, there tends to be an expert bias as well, where they are viewing India through a very specific lens. And it's not a bias-free lens, which is the only way in which you can explain this. I mean, it's like, it's a mind-boggling, not even mind-boggling, sorry, egregious data point that as per the VDEM report, India, our electoral system in 2019, 2020 and 2021 has been less free and fair than at the height of the emergency in 1976, right? Where about 100,000 political opponents were in jail without trial. So that data point alone should make people really question this. And the reason why I want to back up again a bit before you even go deeper. The reason why this is a bit problematic, Rohan, is why is this index important? If you're on the top section, you're in where the Nordics and the US are playing, fine. If you go up or down, it's not a problem. But countries at the bottom, unfortunately, these indexes are used by maybe rating agencies. They can find their way in a World Bank report that then can affect the credit rating of a country, right? Or the risk profile of a country.
That will affect foreign investment. It will affect businesses that want to start shop here.
It can affect the cost of borrowing. So it actually has a tangible impact on potentially erroneous data or misleading data. Again, in this case, if you're saying that India was less free and fair now than it was in the emergency, who has answered this on the 3 questions, on the 3 subjective questions? Who would have said that? That should make you question the logical process of those people that were asked these questions.
They consider an emergency torn India better than right now.
Yeah. Or they would consider Iran, who ranked higher than us, as more robust democracy than India.
So is this a anti-BJP type of bias that is present to have our ratings go down since 2014 to now?
It's possible. I think like media, Western media agencies, a few of them, I mean, there's a handful or maybe 7 to 10 of them, they have had a uniquely negative impact always about the country. And this is something where even people on the other side of the political fence, say even the opposition, people have acknowledged in the past, like, wait, why is, there's certain things that we can agree on, right? That things have improved, right? But the coverage is almost always negative. And you don't know how many of the people that were asked these questions again, the 3 subjective questions in the survey.
Which, to repeat, are pretty much the only 3 questions which would have any weight in differentiating countries.
Exactly. Right? They were likely to give an unfavorable view on India's democratic process.
It's the only way to explain it.
Yeah. Even when, Rohan, there's 900 million people who are going to be voting this month. 900 million people.
And we have a ton of national parties. There are countries on this list that have one party.
Yeah.
That get full score.
Yeah. And so you'd get a full score if there's only one party, so there's nobody else in the box. I've done a fair and clean election because you can't really vote for anybody
And
else.
there's one party. Why is there going to be rioting at the polls?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no option. What will
Yeah.
you protest or who will you?
Or take Hong Kong, which has been mired with protests with what China is essentially slowly ensuring that it has authoritarian control over that territory as well. With the passing of some very dangerous laws. But of course, they're more democratic than democracy. So, like India. So I think the thing is that democracy is a messy thing as well, right? As it should be. Many different parties, many different opinions. You have, like we've talked about before, you can have a communist party that wants to become friends with China and break all relations of the last 14 years.
And they hold power in two states.
They hold power in two states, and that's fair game, right? You can have a party in Tamil Nadu where the Chief Minister Stalin his son can say, I want to eradicate Sanatan Dharma. Fair game. Nothing's going to happen. Go ahead and say what you want. And people have to come and then vote. Somewhere there seems to be again a disconnect between how certain sections of society are seeing democracy playing out in India. I'm talking about the actual processes, not the rhetoric or the narrative in the news. The actual nuts and bolts, right? Are people able to go and vote? What happens at the polling booth? And there have been crises in India in the past, the emergency being one of them. Or what is it called? Booth capturing that's happened in the past. Or tampering that's happened in the past. And even can still happen now. So, not to say that we are perfect democracy by any means. But to rank lower than certain countries, and this is not even a whataboutism, like, oh, but what about them? It's like, no, an index is literally what about them, right? Otherwise, when you're not being indexed in a vacuum, right? You're being indexed in a comparison with other countries. So, but the problem, again, forget even how you end up in a credit rating because of a low democracy score. It's the narrative. So the kind of anti-BJP rhetoric that's been working, these reports are like people's favorite thing. So people are like waiting for the VDEM report to come out so they can put out an article saying, guys, democracy is taking a hit again. Democracy.
Studies confirm.
Yeah, studies confirm that India is now a worse democracy than before. Right? Worse than when we literally suspended elections and arrested 100,000 people from the opposition.
And they are saying it proudly. We're joking about it, but they are like, they will say the same fact proudly. They're like, India's a worse democracy right now than it was in the emergency in the 1970s. Studies show.
Yeah.
They won't go on to just think, wait.
Yeah.
Could there be something wrong with this study?
Yeah. Could there be something wrong with the methodology? Okay, wait. Myanmar is doing better off. Chronically unstable Lebanon is doing better. Something is not adding up, right? Or who else was on the list? Myanmar or Pakistan. Like it's.
So big credit. Someone's ears did perk up.
Yeah, Salvatore Babones, right? So because he's come out and challenged a lot of the data that's being presented, I think that's ruffled a lot of feathers. Obviously, he got the immediate label of being a
Modi mouthpiece, BJP mouthpiece.
Yeah, exactly, right? So he immediately got the tag. But just go read his report, right? For what it is, read the data, read the math. In fact, I can give you another example of something that he shared, and I want to share this because he pointed out this March, right? I'll read out the headline, Ron, because this is like crazy, right? A headline that came out in a lot of papers that were critiquing the government. And this is the one from the Hindu. So there's a Pew survey done, and they were citing that survey. And the headline says, 85% Indians, I'll say that again, 85% Indians support rule by a strong leader or the military, says Pew survey, right? This is the headline that was shared widely across the internet.
Okay.
Right? I read, so Salvatore Babones went and debunked this, and I was like, okay, I don't even want to hear it from him. I actually went to the report and I went down to what questions they asked. So when you actually look at the data, 82% of Indians support rule by experts, 80% support rule by citizens, 79% by representatives, elected representatives, 72% by the military, and 68% by a strong leader. So it is the exact opposite of what was reported in the news. Like, you are 100% wrong on what was reported, right?
And
so
this is not even some difficult math calculation to go into and try to figure out how the data could be misleading.
Yeah.
They have simply misreported what was even coming out of the study.
Or like, see, if you can put some numbers together, you can get
85.
that headline. You can get that headline.
How? What would they do?
Right. So you'd have to go in and look at the objective questions that were asked right at the bottom, and then take the numbers and then add them up in a way that you would get that 85% number compared to the others. Right. So I said before, like, what you can say is, this gives full credit to the line that there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics.
Yeah. So I think there was another example of how in one of these cases, Mr. Salvatore, he pointed this out, that they were trying to track sedition laws to see if the country had become more draconian in its measures.
Right.
And he noticed that the line said, in the decade between 2010 to 2020, sedition cases have gone up. And he said, wait. Something's up there, because a decade is not 2010 to 2020. A decade is either 2010 to 2019
Right.
or 2011 to 2020. That's 10 years.
Right.
And he checked it, and he saw that if you checked any of those two, which are actually 10 years, sedition would not have been shown to be an increase. But something about picking 2010 to 2020 showed an increase. They're like, we'll just call it a decade.
Yeah.
They're changing the definition of a decade in some places.
Right. So it's kind of free and loose,
And
clearly,
it's
with how
you are looking for a trend rather than finding one.
Yeah.
And once you go looking to confirm your answer with crazy amounts of data, you'll be able to do anything. You can manipulate data a million different ways to show what you want.
Exactly. It's like, and the problem is, you'll get tremendous political mileage by doing this, right? Because it can catch the viral wave so quickly. If it's just shared and retweeted by the right people, you can actually get a potentially misleading headline making its way into someone's like core argument.
Yeah. And this will then be cited.
Yeah, exactly.
As reported by the New York Times last year.
Yeah.
And they were reporting on something else.
Yeah.
It's Chinese whispers.
Yeah.
To an extent. It's deliberate Chinese whispers and accidental Chinese whispers.
Yeah. I think to this government's credit, I will say that when this report came out, even last time, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar took a stand and he's like, look, a lot of these indexes can say what they want, but come to India and see the reality, right? At least if you are willing to be misled by erroneous models that come up with indexes, then back that up by coming and seeing, validating it. No, wouldn't that be ideally the best way? If I still feel like that so badly, come here and see, right? Come here and see if you come to India and you feel more depressed or you feel less depressed, right?
When it comes to happiness, it's also just like, you don't want to hear that about, it's demoralizing to hear it as a country. Imagine you think you're happy as Indians, and then you hear reports saying, you're actually 126th happy. And you thought you were happy. It's what they say, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
I'll tell another joke, maybe we'll cut it out, I'm not sure. But basically, happiness is not something you want to spend too much time on. They say happiness is like an orgasm. If you think about it too much, it goes away.
I like that, dude.
It's a bit of a non-veg joke.
Wait, what's a non-veg joke? I've never heard this before.
You don't know a non-veg joke?
No. Is this a legit term? What is a non-veg joke?
Krish, you know what a non-veg joke is? So a non-veg joke is a dirty joke.
Whoa.
That's so crazy though, right?
So
now that
crazy.
you ask me, it's so crazy that they would call a dirty joke a non-veg joke. Like, I was thinking how they could come up with it. It's I can't eat non-veg in front of my parents. I can't eat non-veg at home. So
there's like a clandestine element about these jokes.
Non-veg jokes. We have Corrupted, dude. Corrupted,
joke.
dude. You remember corrupted? That's what.
jokes.
I remember when we were kids and we first started using foul language,
Yeah.
and people used to go around asking, "Are you corrupted?" like, and you'd be like, "Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a bit
I
corrupted.
don't even remember. I guess you just stand in the hallway and just say curse words to each other.
Dude, I think I went on a tirade the minute I realized I could say. You say it once and no one says anything. I'm like, oh my god, this is like true power, I guess all these indexes, Rohan, ultimately, does that mean we're undemocratically depressed?
Yeah, it looks like we are undemocratic and depressed.
Maybe we should reach out to our Pakistani counterparts, figure out what
Seek
they're doing.
asylum.
Yeah, seek asylum, see what they're doing right. I
Guys,
think
come on, let's go to Libya. So we have a few questions that came in, and I think we can answer some of them to the best of our ability.
We can take one of these questions, which I found interesting, was the individual asks, is there a case for a free and prosperous India which is not based on the principles of a welfare state? And if not, why not? My answer is no. At least where we are right now, I don't think there is any case where India can reach the level of prosperity that it has to reach without a strong, robust welfare state. I think these are the cards that have been dealt to us over the last 60, 70 years. Perhaps a lot of it is our own doing of maybe decades of bad governance, of bad political, ideological choices, right? But this is now what we have. And to not help Indians be a part of the growth story and include them in that journey of prosperity, I think that's not morally right, in my opinion.
I think it's perfectly fine to, in fact, I would say it's idealistic to want a state where you don't need welfare. And even to strive for that, even if it is an impossible goal, literally, that there will always be someone who needs help, so you will always need some level of welfare, but to strive for a state where you need less welfare.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think these are the cards we've been dealt, and I think we're doing a good job with it.
Yeah, and I think we have a long way to go, but I think effective governance of this country will entail well thought out, well intentioned welfare programs that can help everybody, and including those that believe that they don't need help from the government. You still want to drive on the roads, you want the bridges, you want smooth mobility, and the government has a role to play.
And like we said last time, at some point you also need everyone else to be happy. Using the plane analogy, at some point if people decide, listen, there's no space in economy, even if the plane's not going down, they will come and kick you out of first class. There's a lot more of them.
Correct. Yeah. And I think at some level, if anything, you have a moral responsibility to ensure that everyone receives the welfare, because if you don't do that, next thing you know, you'll be last place on the World Happiness Report, Rohan. And we don't want that.
We'll be below Afghanistan.
That's an all-time low. So you got to be careful. No, welfare is critical. I don't think.
Critical and so cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's a wrap on the episode. Solid job. And we'll see you guys next time. So please, if you all have any questions related to this, we can answer some of them. And leave them in the comments, send us a message.
Yeah.
We're glad you guys are engaging.
Yeah, engage with us. We'd love to engage back.